don't worry about whether it is precise or correct. I want to get the same division of space that I had planned in my thumbnail sketch on my piece of paper. So it's very rough. Lines go this way and this way. Buildings are not straight. I take a second piece of tissue paper, put it on top of the first piece. Now I'm going to make sure that things are correct. And I will even pull a perspective point and take my T-square to make sure that things that need to be vertical are vertical, and things that you need to have the correct perspective. And it can almost look like a drafting by the time I am through. There's no frou-frou, no cats, no pots of flowers. After that second drawing is to my satisfaction and that things are correct, then I discard the first rough drawing, take a third piece of tissue paper, put it on top of my drafting drawing, and now this is my final rendition. If the roof sags, I'll make the roof sag where the T-square or the angle may have made it straight. I will put signage, I will put the cats, I will put the flower pots, I will put the signage, everything that makes the painting interesting. And I will also include the edges that will describe the texture of the building. In other words, if it's a tile roof, I will put those little kinks in the edge of the drawing to indicate the tile. And so with that final drawing, I have a light box, which is simply a light underneath a piece of plexiglass. It's about 4 or 6 inches away. I can put the tissue paper there, put my 140-pound piece of watercolor paper on top of it, turn the light on, and I can see as clearly as day how to trace and get the drawing on the watercolor paper. With that, I take the paper to a bathtub. I have one in our studio, a full bath, and with about 8 or so inches of water, depending on how big the painting is, I submerge that piece of paper, and because it's all rag, it will absorb water, and after about 20 minutes, I can take the paper out, I dip it, let it drip, drip, drip until most of the water is off of it. Then I will blot the piece of paper between terry cloth towels, and with it being damp, staple it directly onto my board around the edges. And the drawing is, of course, on the paper, and when it dries, it's like a drum head. And I don't know how many of you have tried watercolor paper without stretching it, and how many get the mountains and the valleys. Drives me crazy. I will not put up with it, and that is why I stretch my watercolor paper. Also, I'm a very wet painter, so the beginning washes really saturate the paper, and with a stretched piece of paper, you don't get that buckling. And when the painting's finished, you take it off of the board, remove the staples, and it's beautifully flat and dry. So these drawings you're welcome to look at, and I debated whether I should do this, but this is a commission that I'm working on, and it is the drawing that is over there. So I work in basically 3 layers or 3 washes. So I say I have used Frisket masking fluid for the skyline of Asheville. And I also used some of it, as you can see, down in the bottom for the trunks of the trees. So I wanted to echo some of the whites that you're going to see through here. And so I almost have a triangle where your eye sees the big and then drops down and sees that and works around. So I isolate the white of the painting where I want to say, because I don't use white paint. Then I do what I call the underwash. And this is going to isolate the whites in my painting. The underwash included this and was carried through the mountains, and this part is all under wash, and also over there, where I have not put anything other than the first wash. And so the mountains are finished. I don't plan to put anything else into them. The Grove Park Inn is not finished yet because I'm only into my third values for that. I still have my darks and my calligraphy. For those who have taken my classes, know that I need that last 15 minutes to put in all the little doodads and all the fun stuff to make it really read. I wanted the Grove Park Inn to sit back a little further. These elements are not in the physical relationship that they are when I look at them. I had to move the Grove Park in this way to get it moved. And they insisted on having Mount Pisgah, and Mount Pisgah was way over there. So I moved Mount Pisgah. So as artists, we can move mountains. And then on the right-hand side, I wanted to echo some of the tones that I have in the shadows of the Grove Park Inn. I want to create a framework for what's going on up there. This tree is a tree that grows in the middle of their view. You have to go on this side to see some of the city, and you have to go on the other side of the tree to see it. They would love to chop it down, but it's not on their property. So I said, what we will do is we will put the tree over the ugly part of the Grove Park Inn. Backside, so the ugly part is behind the ugly tree. But I wanted to leave the tree there because I think, first of all, it adds an element of interest in there. If it wasn't there, I think it would miss something. And I wanted to keep the right-hand side kind of nebulous in there, but I'm still picking up characteristics that were in the photograph so that the client, when they look at it, they will see the elements of the things that they wanted. So, I'm about halfway there. Nothing other than the mountains are finished. But after the sky was painted, I come in with my washes for the mountain range. The light is coming from the left or right? It's coming from this direction. And they wanted an autumn painting. So obviously I'm throwing in a lot of the autumn colors. And for as beautiful as you may think the colors are in the mountains, when you take those photographs, they usually aren't as pretty as you think they are, correct? So we have to try to enhance it. So my larger elements are already indicated here and probably 95% painted. And this area, to step it back in the distance, is going to have smaller elements. The trees are going to be of a smaller scale, certainly, than these. So both in the drawing and in the painting, we will create a sense of moving into the distance. And for your, you can even pass this around if you want to, is a photograph that I took on one side of the tree or the other, I forget. But anyway, that we can put it down now. That is the way I approach my paintings 95% of the time. And let me just go and talk a little bit about each of the paintings that I brought with me. The painting over here on the end is of Geneva, Switzerland, and it is the part of the old city of Geneva with those wonderful, wonderful buildings. And I have to brag a little bit. The Watercolor Society of North Carolina was choosing 2 artists to represent North Carolina in a show for the National Watercolor Society out in Los Angeles. They're celebrating their 50th year, so they're going to have 2 artists from each of the 50 states, and I was chosen as one of them. So that painting will be going to Los Angeles here very soon. I was sitting back and looking at this building, and I'm trying to convince myself I did it on purpose, but I think that building tips a little bit, or this is not a mat for that painting. I just grabbed what I had at home. This painting, I have entered into the Southern Watercolor Society, and they just sent out their list of accepted artists, and I'm not in. So anyway, it's a painting for another show, another time. But I just finished this in the past couple of weeks. Well, how many of you have taken the class with me where we did this painting? I know that Al did, and two of you will recognize this. And this is very, very typical of my process of painting, of going from the white and light of the paper through the 3 steps that I will talk briefly about to get to this. I like my paintings to have a full range of black to white. So the white of the paper, which is really only here and only in here, everything else is toned to some degree. And then the underpainting of the sky, this warm tone in the foreground, everything was toned to emphasize the white area that I left in the painting. And I won't go into the details of that. You can ask Al sometime, he'll be able to tell us. And then for Lynn's gratification, I brought my dead fish painting. And in this case, this is a painting I did back in 1974. And maybe that was before I even got into analyzing all these steps that I do. Because since I started teaching, I became more and more analytical. You have to be able to teach your students. But my neighbor went deep sea fishing in Camarillo, California, and he came home with his catch, and these are deep water fish. And because of the pressure, when they're brought to the surface, their eyes pop out. So it may be kind of a gross subject. I don't think so. I thought they were very pretty and attractive. But again, putting the painting together, one of my favorite things was painting the tablecloth. I have a tablecloth brush. So this is an old bamboo brush that is almost worn out, and I put it in the paint and I spread out the bristle, and then I come in here and get these wonderful textures on the tablecloth. Again, talking about warm and cool in the painting, I have all the warm fish here, surrounded with a lot of cool tones, and using those warm, cool will give you really strong impact. The center of interest, where do you think it is? It's hard. I feel it's right in there. Because this is where the lightest light of the fishes are, and it's in the painting, almost everything else. It's a vignette subject. And then coming in with all the fun tones of the warm tones, from the purples into the oranges and the yellows. So that's about as much explanation, I think, as I'll get. Is there any questions about that? Okay, let's get back to drawing. Now these are just, I'm going to pretty much read these because they're just a lot of little notes that I made for myself. Drawing is a complicated affair. We often see shapes as outlines and edges. How many times have you tried to draw some and you go around it like this? But objects have 3 dimensions, and the volume as seen in space. All objects have perspective. Then there is the relationship of the shapes to each other that we have to consider. Drawing is simply measuring one point against another. And this is done by observation. The left brain sees and names the object. The right brain sees the volume, value, and the shape of the object. It's okay, some little hints that I have written for myself. See the big shapes and the values in the composition. Squint your eyes so you reduce the details and look for the abstract design. The thumbnail sketch, as I've mentioned, is a simple division of space for composition. Be sure that the proportions of your sketch match the paper that you will be drawing on. How many make a mistake there? You go to your sketchbook and you make this nice little square and you draw everything in, and then you come with a piece of paper of this dimension or proportion, and it won't fit. So that's a simple thing. The value sketch, which sometimes I do in my sketchbook, divides the composition into 3 values for me: white, mid-values, and dark. An old slide holder, if you remember where slides, is a good viewfinder. Or you can take a piece of paper or cardboard, cut out a little rectangle, and if you hold that up to your eye when you're looking at the landscape or a cityscape, it will help you confine the elements of the composition and not trying to figure out where the edges should stop. Diagonal lines in the composition make for drama and excitement and lead the eye into the composition. Look at the painting of the railroad tracks there. And that is from Switzerland also. I think it's named, I don't speak French, Mer de Glace, which is lake of ice. And the trolley car takes you up to the glacier. So we were going in fact, the 2 individuals there on the right-hand side are my husband and my grandchild. But see how those lines of the railroad track pull you in to the subject matter. Even the angle of the mountains and the rooftops pull your eye down there to that opening where the trolley car is. So all my elements in the painting are subtly or not so subtly pulling your eye into it. The one next to it of the Pantheon view, if you look at the pattern of the people as I've placed them, they stagger, some closer to you, some further away. They also pull your eye into where those white umbrellas are and the lightest light of the painting. If you have even divisions and horizontal lines, and you can often get those in a landscape, they are more static, more calming, more restful. So whatever you want your painting to say, these elements will help you get there. Find a center of interest. I don't know how that really fits into contemporary art today. How many of you still like to find a center of interest in your paintings? I think a lot of people who paint, especially realistic paintings, still want to guide the eye to a specific point that you feel needs emphasis. There's a lot of art out there that is almost like wallpaper, and I'm not saying that demeaning, but they will use a motif repeatedly in their painting, and they don't really have a center of interest. So that maybe it's kind of a dated idea. What draws you to the subject? Place a center of interest in or near the center of one of the quadrants of your rectangle. So if you're going to take by the way, this is an hour and about 20-minute sketch that I did of that painting. And if I were to hang this painting or that painting on my wall, I like this one better. It's much looser and much spirited compared to that. But I didn't, well, I won't go into why. But this was done over in Flat Rock. What is the college there, university? Anyway, for a seminar. And now I forget the point I wanted to make. But, oh, the quadrant. If you take your painting and just draw 2 lines, divide it into 4 sections, I find that if you kind of put that center of interest, some